Hey, how you doing? This is Chris over at the Outer Islands. I hope you're doing well. I'm out here in the Outer Islands at the moment doing some work on the main game, and I thought this might be a nice chance for me to show you a little bit of the process I use in order to build them. So, when I came into building the Outer Islands as a game, I already had a lot of the material available to me from previous projects I'd worked on. So the main issue for me was going to be the cohesiveness of the story and making sure that what you're doing as a player, basically, is it fun? Is the big question, you know. So what I've got here is I've got a tool that I built, okay, as part of the Brassgate Assistance Deluxe system. And this is for people who develop games and things like that. So I built this specifically for myself. And what this allows me to do is place nodes inside of my system. So for example, this is one for the gardens section. Okay, so the player arrives in the cargo area of the gardens of Asylum Rock. There are cargo loading areas which are all locked off, as well as closed access to the asylum, which is also locked. Player has access only to the gardens and external areas of the asylum exterior, but the areas they've got access to, there's four. There's the garden gate, the foreman's office, the staff room, and the cargo loading area, because the asylum's closed. And then this is basically little panels explaining how, you know, we access all of these things and which clues are the most important, you know, and then I can work on putting the right clues in and not messing around with red herrings and things like that. Now there's also another important aspect to this, because sometimes I need a little bit of clarity on my direction and so forth. So I'll just pause a sec. I'm just going to add this node here rather, which is the observer node. Pop it in. It's quite a big node. And this will ask Avery for a reflection in the inspector. Okay, so I'm just going to plug that in, and I shall attach it to my flow so that Avery knows that I need a reflection of what's going on in here. Okay, so could you look over the game loop for this section and comment on whether it is cohesive, and if you think I need to add anything based on my original planning. Okay, now normally I wouldn't ask him such a broad question, however, let's ask Avery. And now Avery's going to come in and have a look at the question. And what's nice here is Avery understands the different links between these objects, okay, because the links are defining importance. If I also put in things like decisions, documents, local documents and things like that, Avery's going to understand that as well, and also will understand images, because Avery can tag and describe images. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we've got. So I'm just going to expand this up. Okay, yep, a lot of stuff here. So what, if any, are the player's immediate goal when they arrive? How obvious are interactive objects visually and audibly? Is the node positioned to players reliably to find the lunchbox clue, and do I expect backtracking, and is it comfortable to the player? These are really important because we've got risks here. Players may stall if the key or crate interactions are unclear. Pacing could slow with too many small obstacles for a clear reward, and important story beats may be missed if focal points lack emphasis. Great, so I'm going to work on how I would address these very valid questions. Okay, so I've done two things here in my plan. So first of all, I've put in a note that the asylum gates are visible but inaccessible to the player, with signposts pointing to the radio control tower and patient intake and records, but they're all pointing past the lock gate, and the player wishes to investigate the cause of the radio signals as per their brief earlier. I've also put a disused office that the player is going to start next to, so with a light clue, so the player goes in there and has a look around. They'll immediately set up their evidence board, so it'll be set up for them. There's a journal note by the player character, Detective Shepard, explaining the desk setup here. A historical note mentioning that you can access the reception of the asylum via the orangery. And a note explaining that the manual control of machines has been automated and staff are being transferred to the mainland. Just basically for fluff, building up and some historical explanation of why this is the case. Okay, so now I've gone back to it again, and let's look at some other changes I've made to this. Okay, so I've also added, with the player starting a disused office where they've set up their evidence board and so on, I've added a secret path, so this is a secret way into the garden that the player can discover that allows them to bypass the cargo climbing puzzle. I've added the hidden note, which is hidden in one of the rooms, And if they open the gate, obviously, which is adjacent to the secret path, it will take them straight to the gardens without having to do the climbing puzzle. So we've got two different ways through into this. So what I'll do is I'll quickly check and see if there's any other issues being brought up with this. So I'm just going to quickly ask Avery for a reflection on this. Okay, so let's check it over. A clear linear loop. Arrival, exploration, small obstacles, access controls, enter gardens, diegetic threats. Note, lunchbox key, discovery to progression. Gaps, player's immediate objective on arrival is unstated. Interaction, affordances, how to move crates, etc. And feedback from missed clues are not described. That's okay though, because we already taught the player how to do that in the introduction. So I'll make sure that is noted in this, and then I think we have a basis, you see, for how I can then go forward and create the level based on this. There we go. So, I mean, the thing is, this is quite a small graph at the moment, but I think we're getting the idea now. The patterns look fairly tidy. We have a decent linear loop. There are some gaps according to the AR observer, but to be honest, there aren't gaps because the demo has already filled us in on that. With tensions, open exploration versus gated progression, physical traversal puzzles, blah, 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 blah. So this all looks good. So again, now I have everything I need to turn this into my main dev document, and then from that I can convert it into game levels. So there we go. So I hope you found that interesting, how I work with some of my tools. I do occasionally, well, I do quite a lot actually, basically get feedback from systems like Avery here, which I built myself, in order to get a better understanding of how to basically ensure that the gameplay loop's working properly. Anyway, I shall leave it there and take it easy.